Up next is Tom Driscoll with his Ignite Talk.
It's great. I usually don't have to lower the mic ever, except when I'm after Greg. Okay, so the topic for my Ignite Talk this morning is going to be about authenticity in schools. And I think it pairs very nicely with what Greg just outlined about intention, about creativity in the classroom, using technology, solving authentic problems. Because a lot of times we can't do that in isolation in the classroom. We have to be involved in some type of authentic real-world experience for students to really engage in a lot of this. So what I'd like you guys to do is to just start by thinking about one of the most meaningful learning experiences you ever had in school. Okay. All right, now raise your hand if that involved in any way interacting or engaging with someone outside of the classroom. Raise your hand. Okay. So my goal with a lot of this is to try to make it so that more of those meaningful learning experiences are actually happening in real-world authentic experiences. So one thing that we're going to start out with, there we go, is to think about some of the deeper learning schools that you may have heard of across the country. A lot of these are inspiring places that have students engaging in real-world work. That's one of the things that I think is a common thread across these. So High Tech High is one. Design 39, which was just mentioned in the last slide. Iowa Big is one that we mentioned in our session yesterday. But the problem is it's really hard to pull this off on your own as a classroom teacher. Okay, a lot of us have the intention to try to get to real-world experiences, but it's tough. So I'll ask another question of you guys. For all of you that have tried to do something a little bit more authentic and real-world in your classroom, raise your hand if you've experienced a challenge or a barrier to doing it. Okay. It's really hard to do this, and again, you can't do it on your own. So what I'm going to do in this talk is highlight some different tools and strategies and ways that schools and teachers can actually go about engaging in real-world authentic experiences in their classroom. So I'm going to start with a quick story from a middle school teacher that I was working with who was very well intentioned with trying to redesign some of her lessons in her classes. And I was asking about, what are some of the issues that she's confronting, and I asked the question, I was like, what opportunities do they have to engage in some type of relevant real-world work? And she was a little perplexed about even the question. She's like, how would I even start going about doing that? She's like, where do I work, either within my curriculum or in my lesson design, or how do I establish connections with other people around the world or in the local community? And it really was a challenge, and that was an aha moment for me to think, what, have we really created the conditions for teachers to engage in this in a meaningful way, in a way that they could actually be set up to be successful? So one other thing that hit me is that recently we were working with a new XQ-RI challenge. If anyone's familiar with XQ, it's a group based out of California that they're committed to redesigning the high school experience across the country. And we actually had a lot of our students involved with this. You can actually see there half of our design team is actually made up of high school students. And when we asked them, what should we do when we redesign our high school, the number one thing that they said in this activity was that we want more real-world opportunities. We want to actually take what we're learning in high school and apply them in some meaningful way with something that we're passionate about. And that was the number one thing that they said that high school should be about. So what we also have is a partnership with a group called Digital Promise. And what they do is they have this group called the League of Innovative Schools. And we get to pick a project to work on with other districts. So we engaged in a project with 4 other districts around the country on real-world learning. And we're about 3/4 of the way through this pilot right now. And one thing that we've developed is, all right, if schools and teachers want to get involved with this, what are the various entry points to do that? And we came up with this map here. I'll share this out with you guys later if it's hard to see in the back. But the continuum is, on the left side is how immersive is the experience, and on the bottom it's how much time is it going to take to prep and actually pull this off. So if we think about like a full-blown internship, that's very immersive. It takes a lot of time and energy to set that up, so that's up towards the top. Towards the bottom would be a video demonstration, in-school guest speaker, or a Skype speaker. And what we've done is we've mapped out all the different types of experience and entry points, and design guides and like a roadmap of how a teacher could actually go about doing this, what connections they can make, examples in the classroom. And then I'll show you guys a little bit later a platform called Community Share in Nepris is another one that you can actually connect with local partners based around the type of learning experience you want and the learning outcomes you're looking for. So again, just a way to try to connect the dots for teachers and make it simpler for us to engage in these real world experiences. So I'm just going to go through a couple examples of what we've done in our district aligned to some of those different entry points. One that we did a couple weeks ago, which I'm not going to endorse Budweiser or anything, but what they actually did is they went on a site called Nepris. And what Nepris does is it's a platform that you can actually engage with professionals from around the country to engage in some type of real world connection or learning activity. So what this high school course did, it was a mix of a math/business class, and they connected with an engineer that works at Budweiser and designs like the bottle caps and the design for different products that they create. And it was a really quick activity. I guess that would be on the low end of the prep time. They went on the platform, they made the connection, they got on a Zoom call. Once the kids realized that his starting salary was $100,000, their ears perked up. To design beer cat, they're like, what? And actually the teacher was like, I should have started the year with this. Why did I wait until March? But anyway, that's just like a quick example of how you can use the technology to help engage and get the kids on a low prep side of things to get them involved. Another example would be a little bit more intense, but how do we get student showcases, competitions, and public presentations? Is anyone familiar with Generation Citizen or We the People Center for Civic Education? We have a few people here. So what they have is a program designed to have students engage in some type of authentic showcase or competition across the country. And this is an example of our middle school students designing a problem for the community. Actually, it aligns a lot with Greg's talk this morning. And once they design their solution, they actually go to the State House and they propose their solution to policymakers and groups in the state. Okay, so it took what would have been frankly, a stale civic ed curriculum and transformed it in a way that was more authentic, where kids knew they had an audience and they're designing solutions in an action civics way for a real authentic audience. That, I think, is a really immersive experience, but again, took a little bit longer. It took more time to actually build that. I think it's worth it, but again, along the continuum, that took a little bit more time to put together. Save the Bay is one that we did for our science class. If anyone's familiar with that, it's an environmental advocacy and education group based out of Rhode Island. And what we do with that is we call it an expert in residence experience and a partner events. So what we do is we try to find where the entry points in the science curriculum for students to go out into the field with our liaison through Save the Bay to engage in either environmental cleanups or water testing or things of that nature. So again, it's not like a full-blown curriculum we had to build with Save the Bay, but we find the entry points where we can collaborate with them throughout the year so that they can get out into the field and apply what they're learning. Now this last one probably took the most time to put together, but I think has a ton of impact. And this is called Sail Bristol Warren. And what we did is we redesigned our 4th grade science curriculum. We partnered with a group called Prepare Rhode Island, the Herreshoff Museum, and the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association. And every 4th grader in the entire district spends about 8 weeks in a learning the science of sailing experience. And they actually get out on the water, they sail, they measure sails, they learn the marketing aspect, they talk to engineers on how they design these. And what we like too is we're showing students in our own community what the marine industry is like and all the different entry points and career options along with that. I'm not going to say it's all been perfect. There's some bumps in the road. And one example is we had our kids go one of the first days to the Herreshoff Museum. They were all excited. They get into the museum and they sit down and they listen to a guy lecture for an hour and a half. Right? So even though we made that connection, there's still work to be done on how do we make it a deeper learning experience. But I think that the stage has been set so that we can actually build upon this and make sure that it's not just sitting in lecture, they're engaging more hands-on. So one quick example would be like some teachers said, oh, they're missing their math competencies or lessons. So we said, how do we actually build this in? So during one of these lessons, on the picture that you can actually see, they're doing geometry and measurements of the different sails as we were going out there. So we're trying to weave in an interdisciplinary way through this program. So I want to give you guys a quick glimpse of what this roadmap looks like, though, in action. Because this is actually going to be available to everybody starting this fall. And it's in alpha right now, so I actually asked the people. They said I'm not allowed to give out the password yet. They still need to tweak some things. But this is going to be available for everybody to use. And the way it works is you pick any part of that continuum, anywhere that you think would be a starting point. And once you choose it, it's going to give you a roadmap of what are some key objectives that make sense for this experience. What are some examples of it out in the field? What does it look like in action? When you're planning it, what is a checklist of things to do, steps along the way to get involved? And then this is what I think is super powerful. It connects you with a platform. There's 2 or 3 different options here that you can connect with local experts in your field. You onboard those community partners so that teachers can go in and connect with them in a really streamlined and simple way. So if this is something that you and your school, your class are interested in, just reach out to me and I can connect you with the team there, because they're going to start getting new partners for the upcoming school year. And if you'd like them to build out a particular platform for your school or region, that they're ready to do that. They're ready to launch with us. So just want to throw that out there. Not that all of these strategies can't be done without the platform, but it's something that you can definitely use to help expedite the process. Okay, so my takeaway here, three main things. The first is that you can't do this without partners. Like, we wouldn't have even been involved with this work if we didn't have partners in the Marine Trade Association, with Roger Williams University, with our state agencies that are doing workforce preparedness. That was part of it. But also connecting with other schools engaged in the work. So we're engaged with 4 schools from around the country that are really involved with this, and we get to share what works, what doesn't, and build off of each other's ideas. So that's the first thing, is leverage the local partnerships that you guys have in the area to help build out these experiences. The second thing is develop diverse sets of on-ramps for teachers. It's not just a one-size-fits-all. It's not just an internship. It's not just a complete redesign of a curriculum, but it's also, on the other end, not just a guest speaker through Skype. Have multiple pathways and entry points for teachers to engage in this and to provide support for them so that they can actually do this and you can scale it across schools. And then the last point is that leverage technology to do this. Some of the most simple ways are through the video conferencing through something like Zoom or Google Hangouts or Flipgrid, which is an increasingly popular one because it can be asynchronous. It doesn't have to be live. That's a really popular one with connecting with experts. But also look at the 3 platforms that I have up there. Community Share, IamBlaze, and Nepris. Those are all platforms that can be used to leverage connections in the community to start those conversations and to really amplify the work in your classroom. All right, so my closing thought is that deeper learning is something that we definitely want students to get involved with, but it can't happen in isolation. We need to get involved with community partners. We need to have them engaged in real-world work, and these are just some strategies that we can use to get there. All right, if you have any questions about that, please reach out. Thank you. All right.